No. Ladies and gentlemen, what is going on? We're back here for another episode of How to Make Six Figures Selling Life Insurance Over the Phone. I'm here with my co-host and business partner, Julian Polito. How's it going this fine Wednesday afternoon?
It's going well, man. How are you?
Doing good. Cannot complain. So you want to give the audience, as they pop in here, a little overview of what we're going to be covering today?
Yeah. Today we're going to basically be talking about Heaven Island and Hell Island and how to paint the picture of like a prospect's why and really how to create the gap between where they are and where they want to go and how to do that in a way that is conducive to them wanting to move forward instead of you having to push them to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a much higher level conversation today than you guys have probably seen like in most insurance stuff, most insurance content really on YouTube or maybe even in your own trainings. This stuff is like, you're going to want to watch it like once, twice, 3 times over. And when I learned this, this was something I took notes on for, months. So this is going to be really, really huge. Is there anything you want to add, Tim, or should we just jump right in?
No, let's just dive right in.
Cool.
Let's go into it.
Awesome. So I think like the best place probably to start is really diving into the difference between Heaven and Hell Island. There's a mentor of mine that I've picked this up from. Is basically like Hell Island is like worst case scenario.
Okay.
Right. So like life insurance Hell Island is basically whatever they say is the worst possible outcome that their family could deal with. Right. Mm-hmm. Heaven Island is basically like the best possible outcome. So for example, Heaven Island or Hell Island is like my daughter sleeping under a bridge because like me not paying for her funeral made her go broke. She had to get a loan. Then she was behind on rent. She got evicted and now she lives under a bridge with her kids. That would be Hell Island, like worst possible outcome.
Yeah.
Heaven Island would be like, I covered the burial, left some money behind, and now my family's in a position where they have money to go out and build a life for themselves to create like generational wealth.
Got it.
Right. And so like, I know we've got some people jumping on. Welcome in. Before we dive into like really unpacking the why and how to do that, does anybody have any questions about the difference between Heaven and Hell Island? Or I guess, Tim, is there anything you want to add before we like really dive into unpacking the why and how to paint this picture and build this gap?
No, I think you touched on it pretty good. If I were to add anything, I would just say like, just so you guys know, because you're hearing like Hell Island, Heaven Island, like what does this actually mean and how does this relate to selling life insurance? Basically, what this strategy allows you to do is paint the picture of what's like the worst case scenario that would happen if you don't do this. And then what's the dream outcome, which is ultimately why they are going to do this, right? So you're basically painting these two like polar opposites of like, this is what happens if you don't get life insurance and really digging deep on those pain points. And then this is what happens when you do have it and just ultimately building more value to make the sale a no-brainer.
And I think like to really define what that actually means, it's not telling them what Heaven and Hell Island is. I'm not going to be like, yeah, Tim, and if you don't get life insurance, like your daughter's going to sleep under a bridge. That would be considered like, if you guys have ever done any of Jeremy Minor stuff, this would be like external pressure. If I did it like that, I'm like, yeah, Tim, like, and if your daughter's going to sleep under a bridge if you don't get this insurance, like, or like if somebody, I've heard this one before where somebody says, yeah, like I can't afford it. And then the agent is like, yeah, you can't afford not to do it because what's going to happen to your family if you don't get it? And like, it's like, that's just not, you're not going to move the deal forward that way. That's a very high pressure sales, hyper aggressive way of trying to sell this. Yeah. And it will ultimately result in chargebacks and deals that don't go through. So
100%.
To create what our friends over at 7th Level call internal pressure, what you want to do is ask them questions that lead them to the conclusions that are Heaven and Hell Island. So for example, I'm going to go through some basic scripting here with you guys. If Tim is my prospect and I say, hey, Tim, is this your first time looking into life insurance?
No, I've been looking into it for a little bit.
Gotcha. So now obviously like I'm going to dissect that first. You're like, okay, gotcha. You've been looking for a while. And I guess if you're still looking, is it because you haven't found the right plan for the right price, or is it because you just haven't been able to get approved?
To be honest with you, man, I just haven't really been able to find the right plan for the right price. Everything's just crazy expensive, like you wouldn't even believe.
Gotcha. And I guess like when you say crazy expensive, like what type of prices were they showing you?
I mean, like $250 a
Oh my
month
gosh.
for 10, 15,000.
What?
Yeah.
That's insanity. And I guess like with what you're looking for, are you just trying to stay under 250 or under 200 just so we know what plans to look for you?
I mean, my goal, I would like to be below 200 for sure.
Below 200. And is it like just below 200 or is that the absolute most that we can do here? Are we looking for something like under 180 just so I know what to avoid?
I mean, it just depends on how much coverage it is.
Gotcha. So, and what's more valuable to you, I guess? Is it just staying under a certain mark or is it just making sure that your family's taken care of?
I mean, I want to make sure they're taken care of, but I also have to make sure that it fits into my budget.
Beautiful. Okay. Let's see if we can't find something. And what I'm going to do here, guys, I'm going to circle back and I'm going to take him through Heaven and Hell Island now because he's not opening up to me about his finances this early in the call, as you guys just saw. So now what I'm going to do is gotcha. And so like, obviously you said you've been looking for insurance for a while. I guess like what got you looking into this in the first place? Like, what is it that you're concerned about covering, I guess?
Yeah. Let's say do you want to say it's a mortgage protection example?
Just go with final expense. It's fine.
Okay. The reason I'm looking into this is I just don't want my daughter to have to take out a loan to pay to bury me or whatever.
Gotcha. And when you say like take out a loan to bury you, like what exactly does that mean?
Like, I guess, how else do you want me to put that? You go out and take a loan and then use the money to put me in the ground.
Oh, I see. So like basically what you're saying is like maybe she wouldn't have that type of cash on hand to be able to cover the funeral if God forbid something were to happen to you. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much. She'd have to take a loan out.
Gotcha. Okay. And I guess like, do you have any coverage in place currently if something were to happen to you? Like, I guess I'm just trying to figure out what we're really looking at here for you.
No, nothing.
Okay. Gotcha. So, obviously we do have to like really see whether or not you can even get approved today. We do have to see if you qualify. But if you weren't, let's say, God forbid, you weren't able to qualify for a plan today, like, do you have any other backup plans? Or I guess like, what does that look like?
No, like I said, she'd have to take out a loan.
Gotcha. Okay. So we just basically want to make sure that we can try to find a plan that's going to work for you, because this is like pretty much more or less the last resort to ensure that your daughter doesn't have to take out a loan for tens of thousands of dollars to have to cover a funeral, right?
You got it.
Cool. Let's pause it there. Now, obviously, like, that might be a little bit of an exaggeration. Most of the time, also, your prospect will talk a lot more about this, especially if they've had a previous experience, right? So, like, for example, a great question to ask there would be like, gotcha. And like, I guess like, most people don't sit around thinking about life insurance. Like, what got you thinking about this to begin with? And you'll hear the craziest off the wall stuff like, oh, my son's friend just got shot. I had an agent who, and this has happened to me before, but I have an agent who literally just told me about this happening to him on a call that he was on. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Her like son's cousin or something got shot. And like, she just kind of realized, but like when you can kind of figure out the three components of like why they're looking, what they're looking for, and how they want, like how they're going to solve their problem, more or less. Like that guy just told me 3 times. Like obviously it was kind of like redundant. He probably got a little bit annoyed with me, but in that call, he just told me 3 times that he has to have life insurance and there's no backup plan and no way around it. So from the perspective of like, that might have irritated him a little bit. It's also important to note though, that like now he just told me 3 times he needs life insurance. And now I'm holding a frame of, hey, this is what you like. Let me just see if we can even help. Let me see if you qualify. So far, we've kind of painted a decent hell island, right? I wouldn't say that was a perfect hell island. A perfect hell island would be like really digging into like what sparked his initial motivation looking into this and like how that affected them and what that actually looked like. That would be like the perfect hell island. But that's more or less the direction you want to take it, is like painting the problem, making sure that they realize there's no way out, and this is the only way that they can move forward today, is by having life insurance. Is this making sense, guys? Tim, you tracking with me?
I'm tracking, man. Sounds good.
Yeah. So let's talk about Heaven Island. Awesome, Tim. So basically, I guess like, catch me up. Like, what does this actually look like? Let's say that, we're able to get you approved, if we're able to find a plan for you and everything, like, is your daughter like, is that the only person you leaving this money to? Is it just to cover the burial, or did you want to leave something else behind? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much just to cover the burial, and if I have extra money left behind, I'd like to leave it to her, and help set her up for whatever life, I guess you could say. Maybe put some money down for a car or something like that.
Gotcha.
I'd like to leave a little bit of a legacy.
Okay. And so you're just trying to leave a legacy behind. I guess, like, you mentioned a car. Would there be anything else you want to leave it behind for? Like, I don't know, maybe like for college, or I don't know if she has kids or anything. Is there anything else?
35, 40 at this point, man. She's if she went back to college, I'd be concerned.
God, yeah, man, no worries. Gotcha. Okay. So basically, I guess what we're looking at then is we want to just cover the burial, right? Make sure she doesn't get stuck with having to get that loan. And then you want to kind of set her up for a future success of maybe being able to get a car, kind of, have something to kind of springboard her into like a better life, really, is what it sounds like.
Exactly. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. And then, like, we've covered a lot of ground here, Tim. Is there anything that I'm missing that you would think I would need to know to help?
No, I don't think so. I think that's pretty much everything.
Awesome. Okay. Beautiful. So what I'm doing is I'm pulling up a plan here. I'm going to get you kind of a price range, kind of a range of options, to really see what makes the most sense for you. But I have to ask you a few questions first to see, like, if any of these plans will even take you. Have you smoked any tobacco, nicotine? And I'll just go through the health questions there.
Yeah.
And so, like, guys, this is not a long, like, 30-minute conversation. It's going to be a 5-minute ordeal sometimes.
Yeah.
Could be 15 minutes. I've got guys that are like, just want a price. And you're like, oh, gotcha. You said you just wanted a price. Like, I can totally get that for you. But, like, what exactly is it that you're concerned about? Like, we just got to, like, reel them back in. You know what I'm saying? Like, take them back to Hell Island. Because if you're just selling, like, I just need a price, they're like, that's the only conversation piece.
It's about as transactional as you can get.
Yeah. And basically the whole point of Heaven and Hell Island is to completely remove the transactional piece and actually create a relationship between you and the other person.
Well, the other piece too is that it creates like a pull towards the product, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're being pushed away from something and pulled towards something. So you have that, like, two birds with one stone effect. Because if you're just selling on, like, the why, for example, right? Like, if you're only selling on their why, you don't have two forces at play, right? You want to be selling from what are they trying to avoid, and then what are they trying to get, and then just moving them towards what they're trying to get and away from what they're trying to avoid. And that's the most persuasive way that you can frame something in sales, especially life insurance, because, like, the Hell Island is so hellish for these people, because it's like the way that they're going to be remembered is the person that didn't plan ahead, and then the next few years of their kid's life is going to be recovering from the poor decision that they made.
Yeah, that's huge. And I think, like, this is one of the questions that I armed one of our agents in our community with is, like, why now though? It's a great question. So they're like, yeah, I've been, like, shopping around for life insurance, go through, try to fact find if you can get their financials, great. If not, whatever. But if they're like, yeah, I've been shopping around. And earlier, like, I just realized you mentioned earlier that you've been shopping around. Like, why now though? And, like, this is a great way to segue back into that whole Hell Island thing about, oh, well, dude, my brother's cousin's dog got hit by a truck. And it was like, man, it just made me realize, like, I used to have a dog, and when he got hit by a truck, it was crazy, because then it made me realize how vulnerable I am. And, like, this whole world could fall apart at any time. And, like, nothing's for sure. Tomorrow's never guaranteed. And I'm 80 years old now. And it's like, they go through this whole, like, they just basically are selling themselves on the product. It's like, gotcha. Okay. So, and, like, what are we covering though? Like, burial, cremation? Like, what is it that we're really trying to, like, stop here? Oh, dude, I mean, I just don't want to, I want to cover a burial, but who would be responsible for that bill? Like, if it wasn't covered, like, who would have to pick that up? My daughter. I think I put her name on the form earlier. It's like, gotcha. Okay. You say, like, she'd be responsible for that. Is that something that she'd be able to float, or, like, would you have to take out a loan or something? So, like, you can also lead them to the conclusions themselves by painting Hell Island with properly framed questions if they're closed off to you.
100%.
Right?
100%.
So I think that's huge. Like, just understanding that you're pulling them away from Hell Island and you're pushing them towards Heaven Island. And it's like, yeah, wow. So, like, you're basically, like, for example, Prospect Tim is, I'm gonna be like, man, like, gotcha. As I'm pitching this product, I'm gonna be like, wow. So, like, really, I mean, not only are you going to be able to make sure that your daughter's not going to have to insert Hell Island, you're also going to leave a legacy behind to set her up for Heaven Island. Right. And so like you're able to kind of like basically take, plug and play those pieces throughout your sales process to create a lot of internal tension, which is, their drive to basically move forward today versus like thinking about it or talking to their spouse or their brother's cousin's dog that got hit by the car. You know what I mean? Like we can kind of avoid these things.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. What questions do you guys have about Hell and Heaven Island? I think Julian's dying over here.
I'm perfectly fine. I have no idea what just happened.
Awesome. So yeah, man. I guess let's see. Well, we're waiting for questions to come in here. What would be like an example where someone's giving you like a little bit of like a tough time with opening up and giving you their why? Like how do you break that down? Because I know what I hear a lot is, and I see this when I like listen and break down call recordings. Some people will go into the discovery. They'll try to figure out like what is the problem, what is like the hell and the heaven island, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And the prospect is just completely closed off, where they just talk in circles and don't really answer.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is like actually getting your question answered.
Mm-hmm.
So like a lot of the times I'll be like, what is it that like, is this your first time looking into life insurance? And they'll just start telling you some story about how they need to like, oh, and this and this and this and this. And like, and so what's your price though? And like, they'll basically try to like, you're basically like handing them the hot potato. They'll throw it back to you. And you're like over here, like, oh my God, let me get them a price. And so like the best way to kind of like do that is kind of, I guess you could call it like a formula where it's just like sidestep and ask again. More or less. That would be kind of like the framework is like basically just sidestep the question and answer and ask your question again so that you're keeping control of the conversation. So like, gotcha. Yeah, I can get that price for you. No problem. So I guess like, but what was it that you were concerned about though? And I can make a suggestion there. Like, I think it's suggestion, question, suggestion or whatever is the framework. It's like, but what was it that you were kind of concerned about though? Like leaving money behind for a family, covering a funeral? Like what's your goal? So we know what to look at for you. And usually they'll give you a more clear answer this time.
Yeah, 100%. So like basically, I mean, you're just looping and asking it again.
More or less, yeah. I mean, like, because a lot of the times you'll get a ton of stories, especially when you get to objections. Like when someone gives you an objection, it's always a story. Yep. Every time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I need to think about it. And there was one time when this life insurance guy came out to and it's like just this whole story that like, doesn't matter at all.
Yeah.
That's why they need to think about it. And all of a sudden it's like, gotcha. So like, and then you're able to sidestep and then just go back in again most of the time for most objections. Right.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. Well, yeah, no, that's huge stuff. I know, when I first got into the business, one of the things that I struggled with the most is like, I was literally just selling on price. So like,
I remember,
if they give me any objections, I'd be like, well, yeah, this is like the best price you can get. Well, let me think about it. Yeah, do you want me to drop the price like $5 and we can do it? There was no why. There's no hell or heaven island. It was just straight, I'm this nice kid that shows up at their house and I can get them the best price. I was like Walmart, basically.
I used to sell it like a gym membership. So yeah, I'd walk in and just be like, yeah, so what are your goals? And then when I'd ask them about their goals, I'd basically just like kind of sell a lot on the price like most people do. I mean, now, obviously, we know now that's the worst possible thing ever. Yep. And it was so funny too, because like I just wouldn't leave their house. They'd be like, yeah, okay, cool. This looks good. I'm just going to have to take some time to think about it. And I'd just be like, yeah, I totally understand. I'm not going to be back like in the area for like 9 months. And I just like, I would like, sometimes I would even throw something out there where it'd be like, dude, I'm not going to be back in here for the in 3 years and 2 days. And obviously, because they would just throw some off the every decision I make, I sleep on it. I totally understand, man. I'm not going to be back here for 3 years and 2 days. Like, if you're going to throw stupid at me, I'm going to throw stupid right back at you. And so, especially with the guys that they're trying to just test you and see if you're for real or not. And one of the things that I would do in this scenario is just be like, well, yeah, dude, let's just get it done today. And it was like, this was like, this is kind of, I think, what Nate is alluding to, where you would just get such high tension sometimes, where it's because you're just basically going high pressure sales to the point where it's just like, you're just kind of almost refusing to leave. So that was a terrible thing that I used to do. It did work, but it also resulted in chargeback. So guys, if you're doing this now, don't do this. Let's see. Great question, Nate, by the way, because this is exactly what I was just kind of talking about. Some leads come in rock solid. I'm not making a decision today. How do I preserve the relationship for the follow-up after looping so many times that tension is ugly? This is a phenomenal question.
Yeah, it is.
So basically, if you want to keep the tension low, it's also about not being overbearing. So for example, if someone's like, yep, awesome, thank you for the information, Nate. So I just need you to, just let me think about it. Give me a day. I'll get back to you. Is this your phone number or whatever they say, right? Instead of being like, what do you need to think about? Or let's get you to move forward today. Or you're going through the loops. You're 10 loops in. They're like, all right, man, well, let's just get it done. And they're like, Dane, I'm not moving forward. If you guys are in this boxing match back and forth, this is where it gets pretty ugly. But to avoid the tension, what you can do is use their language against, not against them, but in the favor of them moving forward today. So for example, when I'm talking earlier to my guy, he says he's got no backup plan. And so this does require you to have a fire discovery, a fire heaven and hell island, and you have to really understand their why, right? What are they trying to solve? How are they going to solve this problem, right? And who are they going to solve it for, more or less? You need to understand really those three components, the biggest thing. Yeah. If you can understand those, when you get into the close, I'm like, awesome, yeah, I need to think about it, right? One of the best things that you can do in objection overcoming is really just using the same exact words I told you earlier, and then just placing it right in front of them and asking them what you're missing. Yeah, I totally understand that, Nate. Can I ask an honest question? Yeah. So earlier when you told me that and this would be used for the Tim example. Earlier when you told me that your daughter would have to take out a loan and that put her in a really tough financial position, and you didn't want to do that to her, and you don't have a plan in place currently, and everything, it seemed like you were you were 100% in on moving forward today. But now you're telling me that, despite the fact that you don't have a plan and you're not able to get approved somewhere else for a comfortable pricing option, now you're telling me that you want to think about this. I guess what am I missing here? And you're able to just kind of ask them what you're missing. So it's almost your fault. Whereas instead of saying something along the lines of yo, what do you need to think about? It's what am I missing? I'm taking the responsibility for having not done a proper job. And you're able to basically remove tension from the scenario and just be curious. So it's not Tim, what am I missing here, man? What is this? It's Tim, what am I missing here though?
Yeah. I think another thing that's, I guess a couple tips is asking questions is a big thing. So whenever you're overcoming objections, basically having them answer the objection for you based off of the question you ask, which you have to be kind of strategic about this. But for example, I think you and I were talking yesterday on the coaching call, and you had a lady that was going to go to the funeral home, right? Instead of telling her how the funeral home works, right, or telling her that, asking her if she knows. If she doesn't know, explain it. And then basically positioning it in a way where you're asking her, what's the plan if we don't get this today and something happens to you between now and when it's paid off? And they're going to tell you there's no plan, right? And then at that point, instead of you telling them, it's well, Nate, do you mind if I make a suggestion? Because I do this all day. I see situations like yours all the time, right? You're asking permission to give the suggestion. They're going to say yes 95% of the time. To be honest with you, in your specific situation, what would probably make more sense is getting a policy in place so that for a fact that no matter what happens, because at the end of the day, we never know when we're going to pass away. We don't get to predict that. No matter when that time comes for you, this bill is going to be taken care of. Does that make sense? Do you see why I would say that? And then instead of you telling her, you're giving her a suggestion based off of the answer that she gave you. And it also, a lot of it comes down to the tonality you're doing too. When you sound like accusatory or like you're trying to
challenging or
challenge
aggressive.
or
Yeah, you got to
convince
avoid that.
them, that's going to get more tension. But you also, there's a certain point where you do like you let it go. You let it go back into the pond, and then you throw out your hooks later.
Yeah, but they need to be basically talking like they're drunk for you to like let them go. Like, so for example, in that scenario, you can take that route with like what Tim talked about. A route that I've really enjoyed taking, if they'll give it to you, like sometimes they won't give it to you, so you have to go what Tim was just doing. But if they're like a lot more responsive, you can just be like, okay, gotcha. And do you know how like this funeral plans work? And be like, no, not really. So the way that these basically work is blank, blank, and blank. And so usually what people do in your situation is they go with the life insurance because it starts immediately versus like they have to save up $1,000 every single year over the next 15 years to try and pay off a funeral. Does that make sense? And they'll be like, yeah. Be like, so based off of like what other people are doing in your situation, like which one do you think makes more sense for you if you were able to qualify? Oh, I'd rather, I mean, if I could start it immediately and it wouldn't take me 15 years to save it up, I'd rather just do that. Gotcha. So like, I guess, can I make a suggestion? Exact same framework. Yeah. Do you think we should just go ahead and get started on this other plan today, just to really see like if you're even eligible? And once they say yes and they're committed to the application, then I'm just going to close the payment right there. Gotcha. Now, Tim, if you did get approved for the 15,000 we're talking about here, then that first payment for $89.99 would just come out today. Okay. I'm going to confirm that first name for you. And they'll be like, oh, wait, if they can't afford it today. Oh, wait, I can't afford it today. No problem. What day do you get paid on? The 1st or the 3rd? Oh, I get paid on the 3rd. Perfect. I'll set it up for them. Is your first name, that's Nate, Nate, right? Yep. And last name is Jackson, Jackson. Yep. Awesome. Cool. So, and I just want to make sure I got your address here correctly. Like, was that the blank that we talked about earlier? Or, whatever. And you're able to just, they're closing themselves though. Like it's not like, no, but here's why you need to do it. Like, it's none of that like challenging accusatory stuff. And like,
you can loop way more if you do it the way that Julian just said than if you go challenging.
Yeah. Much harder to loop when you're telling someone to do something versus when you're asking them why they think they should do that thing.
No.
Much, much better situation. Also getting like commitments, especially with finances, when someone's like, yeah, I just can't afford it. Right. It's like, gotcha. So like, I guess when, Nate, when you say like, you can't afford it, sounds like you really want to do this, but it's just a matter of the finances, right? Oh, dude, like if I could sign up for this right now, I would 100% do it. Oh, okay. Gotcha. I guess like, would it be helpful if we just dropped it down maybe $20-$30 a month? Like, would that be better for you? Oh yeah. That'd be awesome. Gotcha. So if we were able to drop that down to $77.33 a month and we were able to get you approved, like, is there any reason we shouldn't move forward today? No. Is there anything else that might come up that would prevent us from, applying today?
Julian, I hate to cut you off, but I want to shout somebody out real quick.
What up?
We just had a post inside of the 6-Figure Producer Academy here.
What happened?
Dwayne says, well, I am no longer a life virgin with this organization. I just sold a final expense United of Omaha policy, $1120.56 annual premium. Shout out to Dwayne for getting his first sale. I see Nate, you're on the board here. James closed his first deal from generating his own leads. Kyle's closing deals. I think Kyle's on here too. Steven's closing deals left and right. Vince closed the deal 3 hours ago. Really, really awesome stuff coming on here inside of the group. Brett closed the deal. Julian, not Julian, but Julian closed the deal. Caleb closed like 8 deals. So
what an animal.
Wanted to shout you guys out. You guys are freaking kicking ass over here. So
nice. Good stuff, man. Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah, Nate, I better see you in the sales clinics on Monday and Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern. We were covering some killer stuff today. I think you would have liked it. It was really good about like getting people over the line if something goes south at the end of the call. I think that'd probably be a recording to go back and watch. It should be uploaded here fairly soon, before end of day for sure. But yeah, man, cool. I think we can kind of wrap it up here. I don't want to dive back into the weeds while we're at the end of the clock, but yeah, if you guys have any questions or need anything, totally let us know. And if you guys want to book a call to learn about how we can take your business basically to the next level, generating your own leads and inbound appointments. We can include a link below there, and you can come and check us out if it makes sense for us to help. And if not, we'll just try to point you in the right direction. So
Absolutely.
thanks for coming. Y'all have a good one.
In the description of this video. You guys take care. Peace.